Countdown to Halloween, featuring Gregory Miller's Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales. Every night at exactly midnight, a new story will appear on StoryLink Radio's YouTube channel. You'll have 24 hours to listen, then it will disappear and the next one will appear. Plan to catch these each day or you'll miss one. Each story will be 2 to 13 minutes long. If you haven't already, be sure to listen to the introduction to the book right here on this channel. And now, tonight's story from Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales. October 11th, The Door. The Burgett house atop the hill beyond the edge of town was the one constant landmark to all who lived near it. By day, the ramshackle Victorian could be seen from any vantage save the hollow behind the train tracks. At night, it loomed like a dark lighthouse, its shadow a shifting beacon drunks used to find their way home from O'Connor's tavern. And it was only at night that Rose Burgett, 93 years old but still, as she put it, full of zip, moved through that cold estate like a wisp of temperate air. Until 1988, Mr. Burgett had been the sentinel who checked things after dark. The locks on the doors, the latches on the windows, and from the dank sub-basement to the creaking attic cupola. Now, 27 years after his death, Rose continued the routine of ingrained habit and a vague sense of duty more than need. No one had ever robbed the place. Strangers, malevolent or otherwise, didn't give it a second thought, and the townspeople wouldn't bother. It was a hassle. She didn't care much about the time and energy involved, but the routine constantly reminded her that ghosts were not only real, but tenacious, and that ruffled her feathers. And now she walked slowly, deliberately up the unvarnished wooden steps to the disused third floor. A warren of storage rooms and closets and crawl spaces that spanned the length of the house without her notice, save for her brief nightly pass. She had removed the light bulbs from that high and empty place years ago, and everything electric but the heat, which was firmly off, was now disconnected. "Well, now," she announced, producing a small flashlight from the pocket of her house dress and flicking it on. "Let's make this quick." Of course, it was always anything but quick. Her locked knee and arthritis-riddled hips ensured that. And today, in particular, the pain had been intense and wearying. But patiently, tenaciously, she hobbled down the long hallway, cane tapping on the bare floorboards and the thin length of patterned carpet, entering musty rooms, checking dirty windows, shutting and latching the doors behind her. Finally, at the end of the hallway, the farthest, most isolated corner of the house, she stopped, turned, and stared at the doorway to a small, drafty room not even used for storage. At one point, it must have been a bedroom, for a rickety wooden bed frame still stood the center of the room. But neither she nor Mr. Burgett had ever boarded company there. Something about it had always felt off. And of course, the door to the room was wide open. Every night for 27 years, she had checked the latch to the room's one small circular window, then shut the door firmly behind her. And then the next night, every night, she would return to find the door wide open once again. Mr. Burgett had dealt with an open door at his time, too. For months after moving in, the issue had kept him fuming by day and awake at night. But he eventually became resigned to it. What else could he do? Deadbolts, latches, locks of all sorts, even nails failed to keep it closed. And it was in that little room, early one snowy morning 27 years ago, that Mrs. Burgett had found Mr. Burgett quite cold and dead. It was the only time she could remember that the door had remained shut through the night. It had opened easily to a frantic tug, however, and there Mr. Burgett lay, spread out on the floorboards, cold and blue, eyes and mouth wide open in an appalling rictus. There was no making sense of it. It was just one of those things, or perhaps an instance when it was best to let sleeping dogs lie. But this night, for some reason, sense or not, routine or not, Mrs. Burgett had had enough. In the hours after, she couldn't quite explain to herself why she did what she did next. More than likely it was the awful ache in her joints, which always left her cranky and irritable. But seeing the door open again, like a consistent challenge to authority, made her thump her cane in frustration. She hobbled into the room, checked the tiny window, then announced, "I'd like to ask one favor. For half a century, my husband and I have tried to keep the door to this room shut. But whoever you are, you won't let it be. I don't think I've addressed you before, and I don't like to bother you, but I'm an old woman now, cranky as hell and bone-weary. If you could keep this door shut from here on out, it would surely be a kindness." Her speech concluded, Mrs. Burgett hobbled toward the door. It was stopped short when that door slammed shut in her face. "Thank you," she said faintly, heart rabbiting, "but I'd like to leave the room first." She tried to turn the knob. It wouldn't budge. 3 hours later, as the battery of her flashlight began to flicker and dim, the cold already settled deeply and permanently in her bones. Mrs. Burgett slid down the wall to sit splayed on the floor. "Well, I guess the moral here is be careful what you ask for," she said softly. "Or you just might get it," another voice replied. "Your husband said the same thing." You've just heard tonight's story from Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales from author Gregory Miller. You can get this book right now on Amazon at the on-screen link, and Kindle Unlimited users can borrow a copy of the book for free. You can learn more about Gregory Miller and his many amazing books and projects at his website, On Screen. If you have not already, be sure to listen to our event video here and visit our event website to learn all about our upcoming events. Remember to come back after midnight for our next tale. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for StoryLink Radio.